In this lesson we're going to look at 3D CAD, and there are a lot of options out there. There are a lot of choices, some of them free, some of them paid, some of them are extremely expensive, some of them are free if you're a certain type of individual, like a student or a startup or a hobbyist. And 3D design is where you really get the benefits out of 3D printing. It's where you get to do your own stuff, your own creativity, to create things yourself that you want. And to give you some examples, I've done like wall brackets, my lightsaber, which has gone through several iterations, and obviously I'm a big fan of 3D printing robots. So let's take a look at the easiest package, the one that's the most tuned for developers, and that is obviously Tinkercad. So I'm going to bring up a window here, and this is my Tinkercad account, and as you can see there's some things that might be familiar with you, like this is my Z-gap diagram to show how squidged your first layer should be. This is my lightsaber, and that's the bracket I just showed you. So if we go into one of these, I can show you how to navigate. So we hit Tinker this, and it'll load into the web browser, which means there's nothing to install. It means that pretty much any type of computer can run this. It might run slower on some, but if it's got a web browser that's got modern capabilities, it should be able to run. So as you can see, I'm zooming in and out. So it's using the middle scroll wheel, or on a Mac, the touch on the mouse to go in and out. And then we can drag to select, as you normally would using your left mouse button. As you can see, it shows lots of different dimensions here, which we'll get into in a second. You can use your right mouse button to scroll around. If you get into a mess, you can click the home view, which will take you back, and then there's top, and you can use these. So this is the right, and then we can go to the back, and you can choose a corner for an angle. I'll zoom out a little there. Now if you want to pan, you need to hold down the shift key, and that allows you to pan. Okay, so that's navigating. What else might you want to do with an existing object? Well, we did select it and we've got some measurements. What you might want to do as well is take an existing object, STL, that you've got from, say, Thingiverse, and import it. So we can do that as well. So we click import, and you can see it supports STL, OBJ, and SVG up to 25 megabytes, and there are a lot of STL files out there that are a lot bigger than 25 megabytes. So if we drag an STL onto here, we can see what an existing file will look like. So I've got my Dropbox here, and I'm going to find my 3D objects, 3D models. This is all the stuff that's been downloaded, and all my G code in there, you can see. So let's find an STL. Stormtrooper, that sounds good. Stormtrooper high res. Now, is that bigger than 25 megabytes? It's 15. Oh, it's too complex. It needs to be less than 300,000. So let's find another. Yeah, not the TARDIS. Let's see what else we've got here. So we've got a simple parts tray. Okay, we'll import that in. So we've got the parts tray and we can move it around. We've got a bit of space here. What you can do is you can actually edit this grid and set how big you want it to be. So I'm going to make the bed the same size as my CR10, which is 300mm by 300mm. That just gives us a little bit more space to work with, and I'm going to select all of this and move it. So you see how I select and I can drag, so I'll do that again. I can select a bounding box and I can drag around, and I can move it on the grid here. But you don't have to just drag, you can actually move using the cursor key. So if I press it once, it'll just move once. I can move up, down, right, left. So that's on the X and Y coordinates. I can also make the grid snapping to be bigger or smaller. So one tap of a key will move it further. And if you want to move even faster and further, you can hold the shift key while you move and it'll do it in increments of 10. What if you want to move up or down though? If you want to move it in the Z axis? Well, you can see there's an arrow here. You can move that up and down. You can actually do it below the bed, which makes it a little bit tricky when you've got something below the bed. Really, you want it to be absolutely flat on the bed at 0, right? So if I set this at 10, that's floating in air, you want it to be at 0 usually. So we'll do that. As well as being able to drag it up and down though, you can hold the control key, move it up and down, and control and shift, and you can move it in larger increments. Set that back at 0. Now these two objects don't naturally go together, but if you did want to, you could combine the two and you could export the whole thing. Everything in design, we could export it all as an STL file, and then we could import it into our slicer and we could print it out. So if you wanted to put a friend's head on Buddha's body, that's how you would do it. You would bring in both objects, combine them. But really they're not combined because I can move that out of the way. So one last thing while we look at imported objects and just navigating. If I do Command A or Control A on Windows, select everything, we can actually combine it. We can group it into one object and gives it a little bit of thinking. This is quite a complex object we have right here. But we've grouped the whole thing now. That's one object. So when we export, we could actually do the selected shape because it's one shape. So that's just navigating. But really, you want to start your own object, right? So I'm going to undo. Because there's no save. It just saves as you're doing things. So it's all in the cloud. And that for good or bad, right? Because it being in the cloud, it can mean that your slow connection means it's a slow experience. But the good thing about it being in the cloud is if your machine crashes, it's still there.